Hello and welcome. I'm Uday Pratap Singh. You're joining us on another special edition of the NewsX and Businessworld panel on the Indian economy and the financial stimulus package announced by the Union government. What does corporate India think of it? What do different sectors of our country think of it? What has the government done right? What are the other expectations of different economic sectors? We'll be analyzing that over the next 1 hour. Thanks so much to our viewers for being with us. Let's open it up to a special panel. Joining us today, S. Ravi is with us, Managing Partner, Ravi Rajan, and Co-Chartered Accountants, Chairman, TFCI, also UTI Trustee, Independent Board Member in a number of companies, and also former Chairman of BSC. Vikram Gupta is also with us live, founder and managing partner of Ivy Cap Ventures. Sanjoy Roy is joining us live, managing director of Teamwork Arts. Ms. Janvi Phukan is live with us. She's president of Fiki Flow. Agnello Rajesh Athaide is joining us live. He's a social entrepreneur. He's also chairman and MD of the St. Agnello's Computers and a motivational speaker. Ms. Megha Moore completes our panel, co-founder True Weight Wellness. And also with us, as always, is Dr. Anurag Batra, Chairman and Editor-in-Chief, Businessworld and Exchange for Media. Welcome all of you to the broadcast. Let me begin with you, Mr. Ravi, if I can first, on your takeaways, your first reactions to, of course, the government stimulus, what all the government has done right so far, and your expectations on what perhaps more they can do for the Indian economy in the days ahead.
So I would like to, good evening to everybody. I would like to start with a small comment, and that is a quote from Lenin. The quote is as follows, that nothing has happened in decades, but decades happens in weeks. So this is a type of a situation where we have witnessed a very different 2020. This whole decade has started on a very different path. Now, coming to the package itself, the package, as announced by the Prime Minister, is 10% of the GDP, so to say. But let us break this. I would like to discuss it in a more grinded way. But just to take it, there are three steps that they have taken. Step number one, they have tried to help the most needy people. That's why we saw help to the migrant laborers, food grains to workers, and a lot of support to agriculture. So this has been the focus. So the needy people have been first, they have attempted to help them, and they have helped them also. Then second comes the businesses, the SME and MSME business, which is actually the backbone of the Indian industry. That has been helped. Then comes the structural part of it, which comes into the later announcement made by the Finance Minister, which includes Essential Commodities Act, and also change in the or reinventing the whole public sector space by consolidating it and disinvesting it both. So that there has been this, if you break the package, it is into three clear segments. That is the sum and substance of the whole package to start with. Okay. And to help the DISCOMs, really 90,000 crores, the DISCOMs were actually ailing, and the DISCOM industry has been sort of supported. And in the structural part, the MRO has been supported in the aviation space. So, and as I said, the Essential Commodities Act, which will give actually good pricing to the farmers. And then focusing on agricultural reforms, etc. So this has been the strength of this package.
Dr. Batra?
You know, Mr. Ravi, you worked with the government. You were the chairman of the BSC. You've been on numerous boards, UTI trustee, now the chairman of the Travel Finance Corporation of India. You know, the government has done the most it could have. What are the areas that the government will do going forward? Are there areas, if you see this at installment one, stage one, do you envisage some of the sectors that have been, for example, you've talked about textiles. You wrote a column for us on how the textile sector is important. So what will happen to textile? We have Janvi Phukan, who represents the travel sector in some way. We have Sumit Roy, Sanjoy Roy, who represents the entertainment and the experiential events. So lots of sectors which have been decimated to zero. There is nothing in them for them. So do you see something more coming, and specifically what could it be?
So what I see is, first of all, the government has focused on generally reviving the industry. but sectoral reforms will have to come in, because sectoral reforms, without sectoral reforms, and what will happen is everybody is evaluating the ground reality of this COVID. How much lockdown, how much period will it go? Nobody is sure about it. So I think there will be if you even see from 27th of March, where the first announcement was made by Reserve Bank till now, the announcements have come in stages. And principally it has been done because they are evaluating the situation and more will follow. That's what I feel. About textiles, I have very clearly said, and that has come very close, Mr. Batra. Just about a few days ago, Reserve Bank on exporters has given some relief to the exporters. They have given moratorium also. So I think you'll see this coming in stages. The travel industry will also, which is slowly opening out, and the aviation industry is going to see some stimulus. So I feel that it will open out in a slow and a collaborated fashion. That's what is my take.
We'll explore that. We'll explore that point a bit later on the show. But let me bring in Janvi Phukan now, if I can. Your analysis, Ms. Phukan, of the government stimulus so far. What all has the government done right? What all do you appreciate in that stimulus package? And what still needs to be done now in the days ahead?
Good evening, and thank you for having me on the show. The government has taken a very bold and bold step ahead with the stimulus which has been given, and I'm sure they will, like Ms. Roy has mentioned, they will take it phase by phase. But of course, the moot point was to start at the grassroots, which they have done. Their emphasis on agriculture, on the MSMEs, on the textiles. So sector-wise, they've approached this problem. And I know that though I come from the tourism industry and we are waiting for a great announcement, hasn't come as yet. However, I'm sure that that is in the offing for an industry which offers 10%, contributes 10% to the GDP. We are still waiting. However, that will come soon. And in the meantime, all we have asked for is the interest-free, the collateral-free loans, which are in the pipeline. But for the opportunities in the MSME, which has been tackled, and the agriculture, which is, the government has shown that, it's just that we need the stimulus to go out further and faster to the ground level. We're just waiting to see that. In principle, it's on the right direction, but it should reach the grassroots.
Okay, since you cited the tourism sector in specific, I'm going to then ask you a specific question for that sector. What are your expectations for the tourism sector? You know, as you said, it contributes 10% to our GDP. It's also a job creator. It's a sector which employs a lot of Indians, and that's why it should gain prominence and importance to government right now, as you're saying, but it hasn't got anything so far. What are your expectations? What are your key demands, ma'am, on behalf of the tourism sector?
Yes. So the key demands really are that interest-free, collateral-free loans and the moratorium extended, because there's like 4.3 crore jobs dependent on this industry, and which hasn't come in. And so it's impacting the very small stakeholders. They need that stimulus. They need this to happen faster, and they need the assurance of the government. This was in the offing. That be one, and the fact that this industry, and especially the hospitality, who's donated all its rooms to the government during COVID time, they would have been happier to be able to see that offering coming from the government sooner. But we are hoping it'll be sooner than later. Right now, give us interest-free, collateral-free loans to get by, and then extend the moratorium.
All right, Sanjay Roy, let's take that to you next. Your analysis of the government stimulus package. Your frank assessment, what are the positives, what are the thumbs up, what are the thumbs down? You'll have to unmute yourself. Yeah, perfect.
Uday, thanks. I would sum it up by saying too little too late to begin with. And while they have opened up agriculture, at least allowed the farmers to be able to harvest the grains, which was a huge step, and I think very important, and will lead to a broadening at least of the agriculture issue there. I think for the rest of it, I don't see anything in this package that brings about demand, that's going to lead to demand. Until you have demand, all of this other stuff that you're looking at, loans and so on and so forth. I mean, to what extent? For how long? How long are people going to be dependent on these loans? You have to not just give a person a fish, you have to teach him to fish and allow him to go out there and fish and make his own living. And we don't see any of that. What one has seen is that you've had over 4,800 advisories correcting the earlier notification. So every time government has gone out with a policy, they've had to correct it, recorrect it, and so on and so forth. I think the biggest danger right now, Uday, that I think everybody has to be very, very careful about is the shutting down of states. The Republic of Haryana, the state of Delhi, the Kingdom of Uttar Pradesh, you can't use my workers. We are India, we are one country, we are one citizen. The daily wage worker may have left for his or her hometown because they were not given assurances that they would get some kind of support here. Suddenly, cities, most importantly, have realized what the daily wage worker contributed to his or her city, which has built the city and created a demand. They're the ones who went and bought the 5 rupee soap or the 10 rupee coconut oil, the 1 kilo of dal and the 20 rupees of tomatoes, etc., that kept the economy at the kirana store level kicking around. If you don't have demand, and as like Jahnavi said, loans are fine. If you don't have tourism, if you don't have a vision, if you don't open travel, because as you know, Uday, COVID is here to stay. We all know that in this room. Right from the beginning, we've been questioning, can in a place like India, can you do this kind of lockdown without test, trace, and isolate in a scientific way and ensure that we flatten the curve?
Okay.
After 60 days, we're saying we haven't flattened the curve. Yes, we have an advantage of the fatality level to our advantage. Use that. Use it in a logical way. Be able to strengthen your health system. Ensure that anybody who's got this disease, you're able to push back on the fear factor and allow for free health benefits. For the rest of it, one doesn't see much joy. And as
Dr. Batra?
I think Mr. Ravi said,
Sanjoy, you're being very real, but there must be something good in the package. What's good in the package? You said too little, too late, but what's good in the package? And Sanjoy, dare I say, entrepreneurs have built themselves with or without the government.
I think the best thing in the package, or the best thing to happen right now, Anurag, Uday, is that every crisis allows for an opportunity to reset, reboot, recreate, and innovate. That for an entrepreneur in India, this is the best time. Reinvent yourselves. Look at the future. Don't look at necessarily the past. And Anurag is right. Is there a benefit? The problem is that because of our archaic laws, because of the system that we have, that where we have to find a way around everything, can we get rid of some of that baggage? If that was part of the structural change that Mr. Ravi talked about, then you would be able to unleash the power of 1.3 billion people. These are the same people who go to NASA and get their rockets to go off. Can we unleash the power? But you can do that only if you have structural changes.
Okay, that's a good point that you made, that use the time as a pause button and then a reset button as well. And the onus is of course on government, but also then on entrepreneurs, as Anurag Batra said, that entrepreneurs have succeeded with or without the government. Perhaps the onus is on them also now to turn this adversity into some sort of positivity for them and their businesses. Let me take that to Vikram Gupta if I can. Vikram Gupta, come in here. Your takeaways from what the government has announced so far, your pluses and what are your minuses from the stimulus package that has been announced?
Thanks, Uday. And I think you've made a very interesting point that entrepreneurs really have to innovate at this time, and they are actually. And I think, first of all, at the bigger picture level, as Jahnavi said, that it's a very bold move. Getting a package of 10% of GDP out is actually not a small thing. But at the same time, I think the most important thing is the execution part. And I think this government has been very good in coming up with good schemes, good ideas, but I think at the execution level is where we tend to, not do a good job. I was looking at a McKinsey report which came out very recently, which is looking at the overall impact of this entire situation. And I think if you compare apples to apples, we're talking about a net impact of only about 2% and not 10%. So I think one needs to factor that, while we're talking about 10% of the package, the impact is only going to be 2%. And various estimates are talking about where the GDP is headed. And I think we are talking about the negative zone in this current financial year. So I think there is a lot more that we need to do. And I think one of the important things, which is a big opportunity for India as a country, is the fact that there's a huge mindset of moving out of China. Most of the manufacturing, which is based in China, whether it's Japanese investors or US investors, they all want to move out of China. And I think India has a huge opportunity to capture that wave. Unfortunately, I think we're not fully ready yet to capture that opportunity. But at the same time, I think at least there's some movement which is happening at that level. But I think I wish the package had done something very specific to capture that opportunity, which I think is not done well. The second point which you mentioned on the entrepreneurs have to innovate, but I think at the same time, entrepreneurs do need support at this time. And on one side, we're talking about giving them the support with respect to the waivers of loans or delaying their payments. But I think what they do need is also a more robust venture capital ecosystem. So I can talk to you from a venture capital perspective because I run a venture capital fund. I think this country needs a lot more venture capital, and that too domestic capital. I think government recently took a view in terms of not letting the Chinese investors to come into the Indian startup ecosystem. But at the same time, what we've not done is develop the Indian domestic capital pool. So there is a huge potential that the government could have probably tapped or looked into in terms of encouraging the domestic venture capital funds to really get part of those funds and really encourage the SMEs to get more funds. So I think that is something which has not happened fully yet, even though. Sorry.
And Vikram, I want you to, you represent, so to say, the private equity venture capital startup ecosystem. Now, startups need funds. You've been talking about it. There is a worry that a lot of startups may not find the capital they need to survive because the revenues have gone down. They're not getting funded. I know you announced some investments, not talking of you specifically. But where is the money for startups? Where will it come from?
Yeah, I think it's very unfortunate that investors, of course, we ourselves have slowed down on making new investments, even though, we announced 2 investments in the last 8 weeks itself. And we'll continue to make investments. It's just that most of the VCs have slowed down in making new investments. The focus is primarily on the existing portfolio companies. But you're absolutely right. If a startup was about to raise funds just pre-COVID, and they're going to market to raise funds, I think they're going to have real hard time if they're actually burning cash. Our advice to the startups is basically to really sit tight, focus on your costs, focus on your core business. Don't burn cash in areas which are not core to your business. And I think that any startups who've actually done that, including even in the travel and hospitality area, there are about 3,000 startups in the travel and hospitality areas, and we believe that almost 90% of them will have very tough time really surviving this crisis. But those 10% who will survive, I think they will do quite well when they come out of this crisis. Imagine the kind of opportunity they will have with much lesser competition. And those are the startups who would have really done the right things in this time. So the startups who really deal with the situation, with a lot of caution and focus on their core business, cutting costs where they're required, and even investors will appreciate those startups much more, and they will get funded much faster once the crisis gets a little normal.
Okay, let's take that to Megha more if we can. Megha, come in here. Your takeaways on what the government has done so far. What were the positives for you in the stimulus package announced by the government? What do you make of the reform measures as well that the government has spoken about? Because that's been a big plus as well. The government trying to take advantage of the situation to push through reform. So your main takeaways, your analysis.
Thanks, Uday. Thanks for having me here. So it's great that I get to talk right after Mr. Gupta, because one of the startups that he talks about is me. So there are about 50,000 startups in the country today, and sadly, we don't qualify in anything. We may be MSME, but we were never eligible for bank loans. So now there are no more loans because we don't have anything outstanding with the banks. Even the SIDBI COVID assistance scheme that was launched, which was specifically for startups and VC funded startups, but it mentions that you have to be net worth positive and profitable. Now, which VC funded startup is net worth positive and profitable? So basically, if I say specifically for me and my type of companies, it's really been, we are AatmaNirbhar, we are on our own. Everything that we do, we have to do on our own. But like the discussion that happened earlier, this is the time to create opportunities, and only those who can sustain this period, stay afloat and see opportunity in this crisis, only those people will survive. So that's what we are also doing. We're doing everything that we can to survive. A lot of government reforms are towards bringing more liquidity in the system. And I think that is the only hope, that the liquidity will bring in demand and will sustain the economy for some time. We are headed for a recession, but how fast will be the fall and how much will be the downfall is what all of us have to see. But the liquidity measures is the only hope. I think the economic stimulus is announced. It's like 10% of GDP, but what's trickling down to the companies is more important.
Okay.
Whether it is 2%, 8%, 10%, show us the money. Because once we have that, we can do something. Until then, we are doing all that it takes to survive, to keep our costs.
I have to take a break, after which we'll, of course, address some of your larger questions. But before that, let's rope in Agnello Rajesh as well for his opening comments. Welcome, sir. Thank you for being with us as well. Your takeaways, your analysis of what the government has done right and what you still expect from them.
Well, thank you, Uday. Thank you for that. And we look forward to the land, labor, liquidity and law reforms, which will attract foreign direct investments into the country. So the country will move into recession, and to come out of recession, the economy will demand expenditure into the economy, in which the spending has to start from the government, which they have announced with this 20 lakh crore of investments. We look towards large investments happening in the infrastructure sector, because expenditure by the government is income to the people. That is one mode of getting money. And the other mode of getting money is the foreign direct investments, because of which these reforms are going to play a very attractive role. So we look forward for that. At the same time, I also predict that the next 5 to 10 years is going to be a loan economy for India, where everybody, the economy is a 3-tier system. On the top is the government, in the center is the SMEs, MSMEs, corporates, HNIs and all of those people. And the bottom consists of the citizens of the country. Every person in this economy is going to be living on a loan economy. The citizens have to borrow to sustain, survive and grow. The companies have to borrow to sustain, survive and grow. And the government also has to borrow to sustain, survive and grow. The only new money that will come into the country is the rest of the world, which will invest into India for the needs of their products and services, which are moving outward from China. And we will get those opportunities along with the other countries like Vietnam or Indonesia or Malaysia and some other countries. But India is definitely going to get the lion's share. What we need to be doing now, we need to burn our own reserves. We need to look out for ourselves, just like what Megha More said. And that is the order of the day. This is the new world order, which always changes after every 50 to 75 years. And the last time that the world order changed, when America became an economic superpower of the world, was around 1945 after the Second World War. So I think there is going to be a lot of changes happening. The rest of the world, like always keep saying, will develop India as a country, not because we will be doing the manufacturing of product and services, but purely because even India is a world in a country, and India also is a huge consumption market. So every company and the FDI that comes into India will not only be looking out at exports from India, but also as India to be a great market because of the strong population of 1.3 billion people.
Agnello, I want to, before Uday we take a break, Agnello, you are a large developer too. your projects in Chennai, Hyderabad. What do you want for the real estate sector? I know real estate sector is dependent on how the other sectors do, whether in residential or commercial. But what specifically do you want more for the real estate sector?
Well, the GST percentages need to get reworked. They should start again giving the input credit so that the customers benefit. The stamp duty registration should get a relaxation with immediate effect. The house loan, what needs to happen is if the home buyers get a moratorium of not to pay interest or installment for the first 2 years, and for the next 3 years they have to pay only the interest component, and then the balance amount gets paid over the next 15 years.
Okay.
That will become a huge driver for the real estate industry and will create a lot of liquidity, because real estate is also one of the largest employers of the country, apart from automobile sector, agriculture sector, and the manufacturing sector.
Let's dive straight into the discussion. Dr. Batra, why don't you come in here with some larger questions?
This panel is a special panel because you have Mr. Ravi, who's pretty much seen the banking financial services sector. He knows how the government functions. He's a known chartered accountant. He's an entrepreneur. He said what he had to say. We have Ms. Janvi Fukan, who comes from the tourism travel sector, now the president of the FICCI Flow. We've had Megha More, who's a nutrition entrepreneur. We've had Vikram, who funds startups, talking about how the government needs to do, steps which will get Indian investors to take a lead. So incentivize that. Agnello talked about it will become a loan economy. And Sanjoy Roy talked about the fact that it's too late, too little, and more needs to be done and execution needs to happen. I want to bring Mr. Ravi in. Mr. Ravi in, you know how the government takes, what its finances are. Should the government be doing more? If yes, in what areas? If the government had to do the installment 2, installment 3, what would that be? If you were working with the finance minister, what would you advise? What more needs to be done?
So my first reaction to this is that, see, we are comparing, everybody is comparing the package of developed countries with a developing country. We all compare the different packages, direct benefit, etc., etc. But we have to understand that we are a developing economy and that we have our own issues regarding funding and putting money into the system. So
Sure.
my take is, first of all, the first step, the heartline of everything is the MSME and SME segment, and then the industry. Because this is going to be where the manufacturing gets on, and core sectors start, like the textile sector, where we have seen a lot of extension of orders or cancellation of orders. I think this is where the government needs to engage across countries to see that our domestic exporters, from domestic players who are in export, are helped in reaching out. Because what has happened globally, people have just cancelled orders. So can the External Affairs Ministry work out directly with these people to try and engage a trade agreement? So I think the question again was, can we substitute China? We can, provided the government shows a little bit of direct intervention in this commercial
That's
bank.
an interesting point. What Mr. Ravi basically is, of course, saying, Dr. Batra, is that we need to incentivize those sectors where India can be at a strategic advantage in this post-COVID-19 world. If companies want to shift out of China, outsource manufacturing to India, then incentivize those sectors. Also, exporters, because in this new world order, we want to be part of global supply chains, so
Absolutely.
incentivize those sectors. That's where the priority should be.
And earn foreign exchange.
Yes.
The second sector which I see is land reforms. So government has identified, and it is a very heartening news, that they have identified industrial lands which can be used. So what will happen is, we will have to de-urbanize India. Urban population, and you're seeing what is happening in Mumbai. The density is so high that we cannot control it. So in such a pandemic, it is important that we de-urbanize people who are close to their homes. Migrants who are there close to their home gets job around that clusters. So I think smart cities, smart villages, that's what is going to be the order. Industrial hubs need to be created. And I was reading a paper on that, and industrial hubs are being created, like the SEZs, which which could not take off to the fullest extent. I think industrial hubs around the smaller towns need to be created so that there's a de-urbanization and declutter from the cities itself.
I want to bring Vikram again. Vikram, the startups getting funding, a lot of your friends went onto Twitter and said the government hasn't done anything for startups. Government, startups will die. There'll be loss of jobs in a gargantuan manner. So tell us what possibly more can be done by the government to save startups.
Yeah, so I think, startups obviously need both kinds of funding, right? On equity on one side and the debt on the other side. And especially debt has to be, at this time or this kind of crisis, you have to think of creative ways of giving more like a forgivable kind of debt, which is what most of the other countries have done. US, in fact, has done recently where they actually have given debt to the companies, to startups, to SMEs, to the extent of paying salaries to their employees. And this debt is, almost like a forgivable debt that if you can pay later on, and of course there'll be audits after 3 years to see whether you had the capacity to pay, and then if you had the capacity to pay, you will pay. But if you're not able to pay, this is a forgivable debt. On the equity side, I think I was talking about, how there is a need for really improving the entire venture capital ecosystem in India and also creating additional pools of capital. And we've been talking about, allocating capital from different sources. For example, we've been talking about the pension funds, huge amount of capital sitting there, which has not been unlocked. And I think that can be, even if a small, 3 to 5% of that capital is unlocked and routed through the venture capital ecosystem, that can create a huge amount of liquidity in the system. And of course, these are, venture capital funds, which are SEBI registered funds. And if the money is routed through these VC funds, we can actually prevent large number of startups from dying, who will die their unnatural death only because they just couldn't survive for the next 2 to 3 months.
Okay, thank you for making. And Sanjoy, again, your sector is somewhere dependent on hospitality. It is dependent on the tourism sector. It's an experiential sector. Again, there are people in the production side, SMEs that support. What are your specific asks from the government? What could have the government done to save so many people who are in the event management domain?
So, Dr. Batsa, not just necessarily the event sector, but really if you look at the creative industries sector, and you look at the fact that there's about 400 million people who get some kind of primary or secondary income, Ragi in the Gurdwara to, the weaver in Banaras. What we've asked the government is for a couple of things. We've said, as Mr. Ravi said, we are a developing economy. We cannot do what the other economies have done. Fair enough. So we've said, pay your dues to the MSME sector.
Past dues that the government owes to them.
Yeah, there's 5 lakh crores due. Please pay it. And just to say the members of, if you just look at IMA or the creative industry sector, there's over 400 crores that is due. That's one. To the cultural sector, to all of the grants that are given out to artists, to dance companies, to all of the scholarships, etc. Dues haven't been paid for a year. Pay those out. Allow for liquidity to come into the market. Can we have rural artisans and rural artists be allowed to access the Ayushman scheme? Can they be a rural scheme made available to rural artisans and artists? Because remember, Dr. Batra, what normally happens is that when there is a fundamental a crisis in a district or a state, what used to happen is that these people, the Manganias or the Langas or the puppeteers, whatever, travel to the next district when there was flood or when there was famine or when there was drought. Here, there's a lockdown. All of India is under the same situation. So to be able to boost that, you have to put money out there, or at least you have to relook at the structure. And going back to what Mr. Ravi said, absolutely, I think India can well be poised to take on some of the slack that companies will look at when they were exiting, if they're exiting China. But to do that, you can't have ease of doing business going up and down 2 points on a piece of paper. You and I know that should anybody wish to start up something, even today, it's one hell of a job. And finally, I think the bigger issue, Dr. Batra and Uday, is the haves and the have-nots. You and me are supposed to be the haves. We have access to the digital world, but do we? I mean, I know half of India don't have access. You're supposed to be going online to be able to sell a product. You're not being able to, we're barely being able to hang on.
Digital spending in rural areas must increase, is what you're saying.
And
because also digital learning, sir. Digital learning, online classes is the trust of the government.
And I think there's great investment potential in pharma, in education, in all of these areas. But at least what you've promised, because at one point you told us we were doing swimmingly and we're getting to 5 or 10 trillion economy. Well, suddenly we're told we have no money. So there's an inherent problem in the system. So be transparent. Sure, you weren't for 3 years, but be transparent and at least fix the fundamentals that are out there and leave the rest of it. Less governance, less rules, less laws. Leave it to entrepreneurs, Dr. Batra, like you and me and everybody in this room. Let us get on and do what we have to do without bribing our way or without having to apply for 200 these things just to cross from one state to the other. I mean, seriously? Is this how you're going to do it?
Let's take that to Janvi Phukan if we can. Janvi Phukan, you of course spoke primarily on the tourism sector earlier, but what about some of the other sectors? Which are the sectors you believe need sectoral reform right now and also need further thrust by the government? Because while yes, they've spoken about, of course, a lot of reforms, some people are actually saying that the stimulus has not got enough funding, to sectors or companies that need it. Loans have been given, but what about direct funding? Do you believe that's also something that you expect?
Well, I would also like to point out that I think government has tried to do some good for agriculture. Those are the impetus which have come in, say the 10,000 crore scheme for the formalization of the micro-sized food enterprises, and the fact that government is trying to launch the scheme to help the farmer producer organization, the self-help groups. These will help. These announcements in agriculture should help the women in the agriculture and the women entrepreneurs. Those are some schemes which are there for the micro-sized food. And maybe the protection of the MSMEs, for instance. They are trying to, on a larger scale, that the fact that now the thing has been defined for 200 crore, which are restricting the government order. So local, and we are restricting other global competition from coming in to bid for this. That is a positive. And where we are incentivizing the MSMEs to grow by defining the changes so that we don't stunt their growth. I would also say the funding access, which is improved through the loans and quasi-loans and equity. The credit guarantees and the direct funding support that the government has given out, something with 3.7 lakh crores. Those are what they've tried to do for the MSME. And also the liquidity given to small businesses, the employers and the employees in the small businesses, which has been announced to the effect of 2,500 crores. Those are some points that the government has tried, is doing, which we think will be in the right direction.
And Ms. Phukan, what about Northeast? Do you think enough's been done by Northeast? This government has done more for the Northeast than ever been done, but what else can be done?
Well, this government has really noticed the Northeast for a change, and it's the story of the tourism is something which has gone out from the rest of the country as well, which we are waiting for. But otherwise, they have, besides just for the COVID thing, they have done a better connectivity for us. They have looked out for us. They have given us the train connectivity. Our highways, roadways have all been before COVID times. That Northeast did get that attention. And the attention, especially the one worrying thing now is for the tea industry. but we had suffered largely because of the social distancing and, but now it's been taken into, taken and some 30% of the labor being allowed to go in. The tea industry has also suffered. However, because of the less tea in the market, the prices are also better now. So that is something that the government has tried to address. It's very unique for our part, for the tea industry. But otherwise, we are waiting for the agriculture is an improvement for us. For us, it's basically agriculture. We don't have any heavy industries or high manufacturing to worry about. Not much of a startup culture or anything else. So for us, it's all sustainable livelihoods.
Megha, we shouldn't club women entrepreneurs as separate. Entrepreneurship doesn't look at a gender. But in general, if the government had to use this opportunity to give more fillip to women entrepreneurs, me and Janvi were speaking earlier in the day, and she talked about home entrepreneurs. There are so many women who are home entrepreneurs, and possibly they will need to supplement their household's income because the husband may have lost a job or whatever.
Yes.
So do you have any specific inputs there, Megha?
So I think that's a very good point. See, women have always been lagging behind, and if this is the opportunity that the government can take to bring women to the front line and say, okay, there is a specific scheme for women entrepreneurs, that will be wonderful, because there are men and women both who are losing jobs, and entrepreneurship will start now. Everyone has to do something. In our societies, people are doing it. People are sourcing, let's say, mangoes directly from farmers and distributing it in the, making it available for the societies, making something in between. Things like those, every household will have to reinvent, rethink, and innovate on how to make money. But apart from women, I think fundamentally, startups have to come under the gamut of schemes. Government has to think that startup sector is different, and startup cannot be defined under MSMEs, because we do not, there is no
qualify.
We do not qualify. The eligibility criteria goes above our head, and we do not qualify.
And possibly Megha and Vikram, some of these small enterprises may become the big enterprise of tomorrow. So if the Prime Minister's vision of that self-reliant India, of an Indian economy that is kind of shining, then possibly startups are one way. Even one out of those 1,000 becomes a $1 billion enterprise. I think it would pay off very well.
Totally agree with that. In fact, I see this as a huge opportunity for the startups who are either already online or getting from offline to online. We are seeing, for example, a substantial shift, of even consumers who've never gone online, the new customers actually coming online and buying for the first time. I think you will see probably, in 3 to 4 years from now, a completely new set of unicorns, which you would not have expected pre-COVID. And that would have happened primarily because of this shift from offline to online.
Yes, I really agree with that. So I can come in, because where women are concerned, as you know, we were talking that 60% of India's women are sitting at home. Now, in this new normal, it's the women who will get the opportunity to add value. We have women who are actually doing the cloud kitchen. So they have underprivileged women who are coming and cooking for them, and they are getting paid. The neighbors are getting paid. And the new normal, when you won't want to cook yourself every day, you would take that help. So these are the value chain that we talk about.
Okay.
Everyone would benefit.
I have a point.
Before we go back to Mr. Ravi and Agnello as well, Sanjay Roy, another quick question for you on your specific sector. I'm sure a lot of our viewers would also want to know, since you're in this space, what will be the future of big festivals and big events, in this post-COVID-19 world?
Very difficult question, Uday, and I don't think we still know what COVID has in store for us. I think it's still an evolving situation. Having said that, we are going ahead. Our first on-ground festival will be our festival in Hong Kong in October, because the Hong Kong government has been very keen that we go ahead with the festival. So that will be our first sort of example of will it work, and it's fairly contained, and it's not like the Jaipur Literature Festival of many of our other festivals. I think the big issue is that how will we be able to adapt? Because we know that most of our stuff, of course, we've shifted online, but online there's no sharing of energy, and when there's no sharing of energy, there is a problem. So even if you look at every report and every statistic, whether it's Deloitte or EY or BCG, etc., they're saying that the two groups that are going to first climb out of this is going to be media and entertainment. With entertainment being able to climb out a little faster, there's already an increase of 47% of intake of entertainment since the lockdown. But none of it is really paid up or paid out for itself because it's all mostly digital. I would say that everybody, the bigger festivals, the Tomorrow's Land, people like the Jaipur Literature Festival, whoever, we'll all have to resize to some extent and relook at the way we do both digital as well as on ground. But at the end of the day, human beings are human beings. We're both resilient. We look for discovery. We look not necessarily only for connection, but we look for the unique moment, because it's that unique moment that creates a memory, which embeds itself into your being, imprints itself in your DNA. And that moment you can't lose. So whether it's 50 people going off, for a wedding to some exotic place because that's what's allowed. So I see this to be resized at some point, but also an enormous opportunity, as I keep saying, to all my colleagues across the creative industry segment, not just in India, but across the world. I sit on a lot of stuff because of my hair, that this is an opportunity to really reinvent, really relook at, is bigger and brighter necessarily the solution? Can the wedding industry, for example, reinvent itself, not necessarily by serving 500 dishes to 5,000 people, but do bespoke occasions and creating unique opportunities and spaces in a house, but in 10 rooms.
Mr. Ravi, I'm just coming back to you in a second. I know you want to come in. Agnello Rajesh, since you're also a motivational speaker, and these days I think entrepreneurs and corporate India needs a lot of motivation. If you have 30, 40 seconds, what would you like to say to them?
This is the time to reimagine life. We need to reimagine, and we have to also understand one thing, that our imagination is most of the times more dangerous than the reality. The reality might be much more softer, and we might imagine it to be so dangerous that the world is going to come to an end tomorrow. All are going to die hungry. All are going to die with the virus. Nothing of that is going to happen. We have seen far more serious crises, and we have overcome that. We will overcome this scenario also. It is just a matter of time, and everybody has to play a role. It is going to be collaborative commerce from here on. You need to learn to share resources. You don't have to have all the resources by yourself. Numbers are going to rechange. Numbers are going to rearrange. Like how Sanjay said that 5,000 marriage people will now convert into a 50 people attendance. So numbers will change, values will change, expectations will change, behavior will change, market will change, and we are all dual citizens. One of the conventional world and one of the digital world, and it will be a combination of both together, which will lead us to a lot of peace and happiness. How happy we should be depends on the way that we think and imagine the world around us to be and the future to be. So we have to be all contributive towards a joyful future, irrespective of the scenario. We need to overcome, because the man is not defeated till he calls quits here. So if he's not going to quit, he's going to win.
Thank you, Agnello. Since I know you really mean that. We want to end this debate by getting a last comment. Very short comment. We'll start first with Janvi, and then Megha, and then we go around the house.
Yeah,
Janvi.
add on a very positive note that when Sanjay spoke about, it's going to be the small niche. It has to be quality over quantity. We always believed in high-end, low-impact tourism. And for the fact that we as the company, which started the long-distance river cruising in the country, now all our large Indian base who went abroad only and, sailed on that 3,000 or 8,000 people and those large ship rooms are actually looking at us now. They'd rather be on a boat with 40 rooms, only sleeping 40, than be somewhere where there are 8,000 people going in en masse. So that is
small is more, small is beautiful.
Small is beautiful.
And India will gain, especially in tourism. The Prime Minister's vision ki apna desh dekhe will possibly finally happen. Indians will see more of India, which India has so much to offer to the world. So thank you, Janvi, for that. Megha, your last comments?
Yes, my last comment, I would say hope is bigger than despair. And this is something that I have learned from Anurag, that if everything around you seems dark, look again, you may be the light. So reinvent yourself, reimagine yourself,
Profound words.
and just step forward. Keep going
Vikram,
forward,
she
everyone.
just comes from a good business school. We just invested in one of our alumnus, Tamanna Zamija. So me, Tamanna and Megha went to the same business school. So anyway, coming back, Mr. Ravi, your last comments?
So I would say for startups, this is a great opportunity because the business models will change from here on, and this is a new beginning. And this is a great opportunity where they can align themselves with Navratna's bigger companies for supply chain, and also they can reach out to bankers because this collateral-based lending is going to move towards a risk-based lending somewhere. I feel the risk appetite is going to increase of the bankers, and I think this is a great opportunity for startups. Great opportunity for Indian businessmen to draw a new line and to start again, because the business models have become lighter. People, even with the migrant labors and everything, people are going to automate more. People are going to become self-reliant. People are going to, know the importance of saving, know the importance. See what happened. The whole cost of living of everybody has come down in the last couple of months.
Sure.
So we have not opened our purses, staying at home. What do we do with it?
Okay, we're running out of time. So I think we're going to have to convert it to a rapid fire.
Tourism sector, Mr. Ravi.
Yes.
So tourism sector, see, it will bounce back. It is going to be a 6-month to 8-month cycle. It's going to certainly bounce back because there is a moratorium that has been given.
Okay, we're running out of time. I'm going to have to stop you there. Dr. Batra, let's start a rapid fire now, please, with our 3 final words from Agnello, Sanjoy, and Vikram.
So I would like to share the DDLJ formula. Define your challenges, identify your resources, bring it together, and the defined challenges can be defeated. The second is decide a line of action and stick to it, and you will be a winner. The third alphabet is L. You need to lead from the front as an entrepreneur. You cannot be sitting into an air-conditioned cabin. And the fourth alphabet of Y is the fourth alphabet is J, which is joy. You need to be joyful in what you do, because how you feel is what you attract. So it is very critical to have the DDLJ formula: define, decide, lead, and be joyful.
This is a new DDLJ that we'll now be talking about. Okay.
Absolutely.
Vikram and Sanjoy, your formulas.
Yeah, I would say that this is probably a very good time to be an entrepreneur. In fact, people also say that this is a tough time to be an entrepreneur, but I also say that this is a good time to be an entrepreneur, because this is a time with a lot of opportunities. So I think entrepreneurs need to rethink, reinvent, and reboot, and this is the time to do that. So I really believe that entrepreneurs who really can strive hard and work through this time will do well.
So find silver linings in this cloud. There are many. That's what Vikram Gupta of IVCAP is saying. And last but not the least, Sanjoy, you have the last laugh because you have long hair.
Reset, human beings connect with the environment. There's a huge amount of saving and opportunity there. And as Jahnavi said, for example, look at the Ganga project, 30,000 crores. You shut it down. You shut everything down for 5 weeks. You had clean water. Look at your AQI levels.
Yes.
Huge opportunity here, which can go to responsible tourism, responsible consumption, responsible demand and supply.
Okay, we're going to leave it at that. Appreciate all of you joining us for today's episode. A fascinating conversation, fascinating insights, and of course, a lot to ponder over for government, for industry, and also for the viewers watching us. Thanks so much to all of you for being with us. Thanks, Dr. Batra.
For more such videos, subscribe to the NewsX YouTube channel, hit the bell icon.